Hospitality. We have just talked about family and food. Well, let's spend a few minutes talking about eating together, especially with non-family members. I would say one of the major differences between individualist and communal cultures is how the family and communal cultures, how they share food with others naturally. They just practice hospitality, especially among relatives and friends. In communal cultures, you simply don't eat alone. It's a sacred duty to practice hospitality. The ancient Greeks saw hospitality as the mark of a true culture, considering it one of the highest virtues of humanity. It was a sacred duty to provide hospitality and refreshment for the vulnerable stranger that you would see crossing the desert. To refuse hospitality in lands where there were no inns or hotels could be a cause for war. Either hospice, hospitality, or hostility. What will you do with the stranger or the outsider or the newcomer? To this day, people from communal cultures, for them, hospitality is normal. Even if you would not intentionally invite others, you would naturally include others at mealtimes. I think it's sad that natural, spontaneous hospitality has more or less died in many individualist societies. Yet we would agree, wouldn't we, that sharing a meal together is one of the best ways to learn to appreciate one another's cultures. So how can we make this more a natural way of living and relating to one another? So here's the question. I think we should first ask ourselves, Janice, why do you think there is a loss of hospitality in the individualist world? What would you say?
Well, here are a few thoughts that come to mind. One is our individualism has gone to the extreme. We are content to stay in our own worlds.
And I would say also we're so busy. You know, we have these events, we constantly run here and there, we have to go to these programs rather than people.
And then the family is so broken itself to the point where they don't eat together anymore.
Or another one would be, the government now takes care of the newcomer and the alien, so we don't need to do that.
And for some, it's a fear and shyness or simply too much work. Why bother?
Yeah. Or maybe we think we have to entertain rather than just enjoy a meal is in common fellowship.
Yeah. And for some, maybe it's for economic reasons. Food is expensive and keeps getting more expensive.
And we've changed our house designs, haven't we? We moved from the long dining room table now to this more intimate kitchen place where just a few can join together. We no longer have the open porch, where people can come and join you. We rather have the backyard deck where we by ourselves and it's private. What other reasons would you say are there for the loss of hospitality in individualist cultures? What would you think? To be true, hospitality in communal cultures can often be over-romanticized. A colleague from a communal culture, he's told me numerous times, we Asians, we practice hospitality, not because we care for our guests so much, but because we want to display our so-called large-heartedness to our guests. It's simply a show, he would say. But let's think of Jesus, the divine host. Hospitality is a strong biblical motif. In the Old Testament, we read of the Jewish hope where they would eat the heavenly meal with the Messiah. One major issue in this hope was table fellowship. The question was not what's for dinner, but who's coming for dinner and where are you going to sit with the patriarchs? Are you going to sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob at the feast of the kingdom of God along with the Messiah? So both who's going to be here and where are you going to sit? These were very, very important issues in their eschatological hope of that heavenly meal.
And we see that the Gospels are full of dinner party stories. What is controversial with Jesus is that he ate with both sinners, outsiders, outcasts, tax collectors, and also with the religious elite, the Pharisees. He accepted and honored the sinner as well as the Pharisee. And so when we practice hospitality, when we eat with others, including outsiders and strangers, we do what Jesus did. For Jesus, meals were not a boundary marker, but a sign of God's great welcome into the kingdom. Not a way to keep people out, but a way to invite people in.
Hosts and guests and honor. So when we eat together, both the host and the guest, they form a special bond, and in many cultures, this bond must never be broken. In fact, these two English words, host and guest, come from the same Latin word, hostis, that is the stranger or enemy. What will you do with this unknown person or the traveler? Will you exclude him or will you embrace him? In hospitality, the guest and host come together as you move from hostility to hospitality. Honor goes with hospitality, and it flows in both directions. The host invites the guests, and the guests feel honored to be invited. And the host is honored by the guests who heed the invitation and come. But hospitality can also be very risky, as the reputation of the host is at stake. A host is vulnerable as they open up their home and the family to the guest. And that is why in some cultures you have the guest room, because in the guest room you sort of keep the guest away from the inner room. Or what if the guest refuses the invitation? Or maybe they don't like the food, and that is to refuse fellowship. Or maybe they spread gossip about the host. So here is the question. In what ways can we revitalize the honor of hosting and guesting well? Let's spend some time reflecting on this in this next activity.